Ravishankar Shukla. Ravishankar Shukla, 2 August 1877, 31 December 1956, was a leader of the Indian National Congress, Indian independence movement activist, the premier of the Central Provinces and Berar from 27 April 1946 to 25 January 1950, first Chief Minister of the early life. Pandit Ravi Shankar Shukla was born to Pandit Jagannath Shukla 1854–1924 and Tulsi Devi 1856–1941 on 2 August 1877 at Sagar in the Central Provinces of British India. Born into a wealthy family, his father and grandfather were rich and scholarly. His father, Pandit Jagannath Shukla, came of a family which had resisted British rulers for 3 generations, and his mother, Tulsi Devi, was industrious and a capable manager. Young Ravishankar's earliest years were passed in a scholarly atmosphere heavily charged with Indian classics, Sri Ramcharitmanas and Gita. He was admitted to Sunderlal Guru's Pathshala in Sagar. It was one of the 6 pathshalas established by the British in Central Provinces. On every lunar fortnight of Amavasya and Purnima, the students would offer the Guru a seeta which consisted of wheat, rice, and salt, for in those days the teachers were accepting only a token salary from the government. In the year 1885, at the age of 8, Ravishankar completed his primary education. The cousins P.T. Gadgadhar Shukla and P.T. Jagannath Shukla moved to Rajnandgaon as partners in Central Provinces and Bengal cotton mills. They preferred and embraced a strenuous life. They were both gifted with good physique and they enjoyed wrestling bouts in the Akara's wrestling grounds. Pandit Jagannath Shukla continued to be a partner in the cotton mills till after a few years, when he moved to Raipur. Ravishankar continued his schooling at Rajnandgaon and subsequently at Raipur High School. From here some of his schoolmates, Thakur Hanuman Singh, Govindlal Purohit and Rewati Mohan Sen, would remain his lifelong friends. He then shifted to Jabalpur and joined Robertson College, whose premises then were what is today the Model High School in front of the High Court of Jabalpur, and completed the intermediate in the year 1895, aged 18 years. The same year he shifted to Nagpur and joined Hislop College for the graduation course. In those days Hislop College was affiliated to Calcutta University. At Hislop College, Nagpur, his young mind was influenced when he witnessed the Ganesh festival, which in those days was not just a religious ritual, but had become a great social movement where patriotism was displayed by singing patriotic songs in the procession. The songs portrayed Shivaji's patriotism and asked youngsters to be united for the national awakening. The credit for popularizing the Ganesh festival with nationalism was due to Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Early life and career 1898–1908. When the 13th Congress session took place in 1898 in the nearby town of Amravati, one of his professors, Bajiraf Prasad, decided to attend it and took along with him his student Ravishankar Shukla to the Congress. This was the first contact between P.T. Shukla and the Congress. Later the authorities removed Prof. Bajiraf Prasad from the college for attending the Congress and for his anti-British views. Pandit Shukla graduated in 1899, aged 22 years. Among his friends in the college were Bhagwati Charan Dubey, Mulchandra Tiwari, Parallel Misra, and Madhav Rao Sapar. The same year, he joined Hislop College as a fellow for 6 months to study law. During this period the British government charged Bal Gangadhar Tilak for treason, and the case went into the court of British Judge Mr. Strachey. Pandit Shukla and his colleagues in the law college would often delve deep into the proceedings of the case. This, combined with the articles published in Kesari, tremendously inspired young Pandit Shukla. He read the translation of Jitar Rahasya by Tilak, compiled by his colleague Madhav Rao Sapar. In the year 1900 there was famine in Central Provinces. P.T. Shukla, then a young man of 23 years, wrote a letter to Chief Commissioner of the state expressing his desire to serve in some way the famine-affected people of the area. The Chief Commissioner got this letter on Saturday. On Sunday, when he met Reverend Bitton, the principal of Hislop College, in an IMCA meeting, the Chief Commissioner made up his mind and offered P.T. Shukla a position to work as a famine officer at border camp 44 miles from Raipur towards Saraipali and 8 miles from Sirpur. The young P.T. Shukla served the famine-affected people with such zest and vigor that he became a hero for the people of Saraipali. The impact was such that they would remember him with gratitude and reverence for many years to come. In the year 1901, P.T. Shukla came to Jabalpur and met his father's friends, among them Bihari Lal Khajanchi, Divi Prasad Chowdhury and Rais Gokul Das. He decided to continue his study of law while attending the law courts of Jabalpur as an apprentice. Ravishankar married Bhawani Divi, then 16 years of age, in June 1902. 6 months after their marriage, the plague epidemic spread in the town of Jabalpur. P.T. Shukla in those days was residing in Enter-Do. It was here that Bhawani Divi fell a victim of the dreaded plague. It was as if plague was now testing Pandit Shukla. With courage he nursed Bhawani Divi. He treated her with both the Ayurvedic system and modern medicine. The doctor advised him to administer meat juice to her. Born in a stout Vaishnav family where staunch vegetarianism was practiced for generations, to save her life, he decided to experiment with doctor's advice and served her brand's essence of mutton and chicken. The Vaidya advised him to administer her the mica ash. With the spread of the epidemic, the servants and the milkmen died, and the entire neighborhood was empty. He heartily continued nursing her on a day and night battle, which lasted a full month and 5 days and finally saved her from the clutches of the dreaded disease. As soon as she was out of danger, he decided to immediately move to Rajnandgaon. On 20 January 1903 he reached Rajnandgaon, and, now that she was cured, he garlanded her with empty tin cans of brand's essence and explained to her how he was compelled to resort to this treatment to save her life. Pandit Shukla would build moral character and instill the best human qualities among his fellows by the example of his own conduct. Chhattisgarh State Agency requested P.T. Shukla to be tutor to Maharaja Rudra Pratap Do of Bastar and Raja Thakur Yajinath Singh of Kowar. For a brief period he also taught Raja Lal Bahadur Singh of Karagar. While in Karagar, P.T. Shukla joined the Theosophical Society of India to ponder the ancient heritage of Hindu religion. He noticed the Arya Balbadni, the monthly magazine of Theosophical Society, and soon the writings of and Besant greatly influenced Pandit Shukla. In 1903 he became a member of the society. Her article Idea of Hindu University gave him a new scientific perspective of Hindu philosophy. When he read books Hidden Side of Things by Lee Beater and Ancient Wisdom by N. Besant, his probing mind got answers to many unanswered queries. The aura of P.T. Shukla's personality, pure character, cultural introspection and teachings greatly benefited the royal princes of the states of Central Provinces. In 1904 he took along with him the Maharaja of Bastar to Congress session at Bombay, where he saw Barrister Mahatma Gandhi for the first time, who had just arrived from South Africa. There were no microphones in those days and the voice of Gandhiji was not audible. There was some disturbance and he had to close his speech. Gandhiji said to the audience, "Nay, you may not listen to me, but a time will come when you will have to listen to me." In 1906 and the beginning of 1907, during his last days in Karagar, P.T. Shukla privately appeared for law exams conducted by Calcutta University at Allahabad. After passing the exams, he came back to Rajnandgaon to start legal practice. P.T. Jagannath Shukla bought in 1907 a spacious house in Raipur. It was located near the lake at Bahapara in Raipur. The new house would become the hectic nerve center of the town and all of central India, from where the freedom struggle against the British would be guided and fought. It was here that some of the boys of the family would be goaded by the British and taken into custody for long imprisonments, solitary confinements, and torture for their anti-British stance, and where one and all would come for solace and advice from P.T. Shukla. Within a few years of starting his legal practice, P.T. Shukla was a great success as a pleader in the courts of Raipur. His unfailing courtesy of conduct, expression, and a clean record of legal service earned him clientage at all levels of society, all over Central Provinces and Berar and beyond. Soon the Bar Association of Raipur came under his influence. Whenever standing against other leading lawyers, he would thoroughly prepare the case and would assemble his arguments with tact and facts. His talent, extraordinary intellect, and will to fight any obstacles made him the leading lawyer of the state. Many times he would take up cases without charging a fee from resourceless, poor, and needy persons, and fight for them against prominent lawyers. Struggle for Indian Independence 1909–1935. This was the beginning of the Swadeshi movement, and the nation was plunging into the freedom movement. Vande Mataram was echoing in the air, and Lal Bal Pal with their forceful ovation were beginning a revolution. Sri Aurobindo's message to my fellow countrymen deeply influenced P.T. Shukla. Vaman Rao Lak, Thakur Hanuman Singh, and Laxman Rao Udurkar would all frequently meet P.T. Shukla, and then they would all delve deep into issues of this revolution sweeping the country. P.T. Shukla would often suggest that it was to lax method that would be most suitable to bring political change. In the year 1910 Congress session was held at Benares, presided over by a veteran, a British civilian. P.T. Shukla came to this Congress as a delegate. Here he met Mahamana Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, and from then onward theirs would be a lifelong association. At the same time, the Kanikabja Mahasabha session also took place in Benares. P.T. Shukla participated in this session as well. On his return from Benares after the Congress, he established the state Kanikabja Sabha, whose first session was held in Nagpur. In subsequent years, he organized Mahasabhas at Raipur and Jabalpur. By the year 1917, P.T. Shukla was acknowledged as the leader of his community throughout the Hindi region of Central Provinces and Berar and United Provinces. These ties would later prove to be invaluable to P.T. Shukla in winning support for the Congress. From the year 1915, P.T. Shukla attended every Congress session held annually. In 1915, the Congress session took place at Bombay under the presidency of Satyendra Prasanna Sinha. Lord Sinha. P.T. Shukla went to this Congress, and he, along with other delegates of Central Province, stayed at Marwari Sitaram School. On the ground floor of the same school were staying Gandhiji, Kasturba, and students of Sabarmati Ashram. During this Congress, P.T. Shukla was greatly influenced by participating in Gandhiji's morning prayers and seeing his daily routine and simple living style. He was so greatly moved by the dedication, courage, and conviction of Mahatma Gandhi that, as soon as the motion of non-cooperation was passed by Indian National Congress, he retired from his lucrative career of lawyer to aid the movement. P.T. Shukla had a strong conviction of the importance of the role of Hindi as a national language for the pride of the country and the natural convenience it could bring to the child entering school vis-a-vis English as a medium of teaching. He always took the lead and constantly pursued the cause of Hindi as the national language. No one had realized it then that the impact of the zest of Pandit Shukla for incorporating Hindi into the mainstream of the nation as a working language throughout educational, administrative, and legislative wings would in future see almost all government offices in the country using the language. The Parliament of India then adopted Hindi as the national language. In 1916 was held the 7th session of Antarbhartiya Sammelan of Hindi at Jabalpur, in which P.T. Shukla participated. After its success, he launched Central Provinces and Berar Hindi Sahitya Sammelan and held its first session at Raipur in 1918. In the 5th session of the Sahitya Sammelan, held at Nagpur in March 1922, he for the first time proposed to incorporate Hindi instead of English as Rashtriya Bhasha national language. A British minister, Sir Montague, was sent to India in 1917 to assess the situation of unrest arising in India after the First World War. To express the public opinion before the British government, meetings were held all over the country. One such meeting, held in Raipur on 26 August 1917, was addressed by P.T. Shukla. There he called upon his countrymen to make sacrifices and to fight for our rights. Otherwise, he said, we will always remain a colony of the British. Political apprenticeship. A special session of Congress was called at Calcutta in September 1920 under the presidency of Lala Lajpat Rai to assess political situation in the country. V.T. Shukla went to Calcutta to attend the session, and there he invited the Congress to hold its next session at Central Provinces and Berar. When the British enacted the Rowlatt Act, it was a challenge to the Indian freedom movement. It was from this point that Mahatma Gandhi started his civil disobedience movement with truth and non-violence as principles. The Satyagraha movement, as it would be known, created the atmosphere of a great revolution in the country. V.T. Shukla did not abandon his legal practice, but would now devote most of his time and resources on the national movement. He gave up all his stylish clothes made using English yarn and got them all consigned to the fire, symbolic of emergence into a new era, and instead now the Shukla household would have only khadi hand-woven using cotton. In the year 1921, P.T. Shukla became a member of the All India Congress Committee. In July that year, a large public meeting was organized by P.T. Shukla at Raipur to protest against the arrest of P.T. Makan Lal Chaturvedi, the editor of Karmveer at Bilaspur. S.H. Raghvendra Rao also spoke in this meeting. In May that year, to awaken the masses and to propagate the political program of Gandhiji, P.T. Shukla organized a political conference at Jabalpur, followed by Sagar in November and Hoshangabad in January 1922. It was in this tense atmosphere that the Prince of Wales decided to visit India. There was a total boycott of his visit, and the non-cooperation movement was spreading like a wildfire. While Gandhiji was planning mass civil disobedience at Bardoli, the terrible tragedy at Chauri Chaura stirred his conscience, and he abruptly suspended the mass civil disobedience movement. In March 1922, the Raipur District Political Conference was organized by P.T. Shukla. The masses of Central Provinces and Berar were all enthusiastically involved in this conference. The Raipur District Administration decided to have 5 free tickets for witnessing the conference. V.T. Shukla decided that no one would be allowed the free entry in the conference. On knowing this, the Raipur District Administration decided to force their entry into the conference venue. Dwarika Prasad Misra, one of the lieutenants of P.T. Shukla at Raipur, informed him that the district administration planned to arrest him if he would oppose their forced entry into the conference. He decided to stand guard along with his volunteers and to block the entry of the officials. S.H. Waman Rao Lak, Madhav Rao Sapar, S.H. Raghvendra Rao and Dwarika Prasad Misra all stood behind him at the entrance gate. The 2 Raipur district officials, Ali Hassan Rizvi the magistrate and the superintendent of police, decided to enter the meeting by force, but when blocked by P.T. Shukla, they arrested him by handcuffing him and took him to City Kotwali. As soon as the news of P.T. Shukla's arrest spread in town, it was as if the entire town had come out of their houses and surrounded the City Kotwali. It was like a sea of people in all directions. The district administration became scared and immediately resorted to calling in armed police, because they had just then realized that the public had really gone wild seeing their lion in the cage. The incident was given wide coverage in the national dailies as headlines. His arrest awakened nationalist sentiments in the police force, and 16 policemen of the Raipur administration submitted their resignations. Nagpur University was created in 1923. Before this, all the colleges of the state were affiliated to Allahabad and Calcutta universities. Sir Vipin Krishna Bose, the vice-chancellor of the university, appointed Pandit Shukla as the member of the executive committee of the university. Raipur District Council and Civil Disobedience. Pandit Shukla had become a member of the Raipur District Council in 1921. He believed that through these local bodies the freedom struggle could best be fought. Alongside this, he wanted to propagate education and an awakening for freedom among the masses. In 1922, the state government handed over the management of schools to the district council. Pandit Shukla established contacts with the teachers of these schools, and to induce nationalism in them, he organized teachers' conferences. There were 310 schools under the district council and 900 teachers in these schools. Every year about 30,000 students were studying in these schools. These conventions of teachers worked to improve teaching methods, health, cleanliness, and patriotism. Pandit Shukla remained the president of Raipur District Council from 1927 to 1937. Here is given the brief summary of the prominent works and the atmosphere created for national awakening and freedom struggle taken up by the District Council under the presidency of Pandit Shukla. 1. The District Council decided to conduct all its proceedings in business in Hindi. The district collector would return all the proceedings of the District Council sent to him in Hindi, and wrote that all proceedings be sent to him in English only. To this Pandit Shukla replied to the collector that you have got a translator with you, please get it translated in English yourself. Despite all the difficulties created by the district authorities, the district council continued its work in Hindi under Pandit Shukla. 2. The district council made it a rule that in all the schools before beginning of the study session or other important events the students will necessarily unfurl the national flag and sing Vande Mataram. The district collector objected to this. Pandit Shukla wrote back to him that even your governor Mr. Gavin stands up when Vande Mataram is sung, so why should you object to this? 3. As president of the district council, Pandit Shukla had asked all teachers to actively participate in the freedom movement. The district collector and the state government strongly objected to this and demanded an explanation from the district council. To this Pandit Shukla sent a very courageous reply saying that to participate in the national freedom movement is duty of every citizen of this country. 4. When Congress in its Lahore session decided that the country's national aim is to obtain complete freedom and to celebrate 26 January 1930 as the Day of Independence, the Raipur District Council decided to celebrate this National Day of Freedom in all schools, and accordingly all headmasters were advised to organize the Independence Day. On objections raised by district authorities, Pandit Shukla wrote back to them that unfurling of our national flag and singing of national anthem is not a crime. Here is copy of one of the several letters written by Pandit Shukla to Di. Commissioner Raipur Mr. Y. N. Sapthankar ICS. 23 February 1930. I am in receipt of your D.O. letter dated the 14th inst. Regarding the greeting of revenue officers by schoolboys with the national flag and national songs. I feel sure you must be realizing that national flag is an embodiment of the most patriotic sentiments of the nation, whether dependent or independent, or whether within British Empire or outside it. A flag is said to be the necessity for all nations. It is a dire necessity for India, where we have to cultivate in our children the same sentiments towards our national flag which the unfurling of the Union Jack evokes in the English breasts. When even the honourable ministers of the Crown, and along with highly placed European revenue officers, have received such greetings, and have in true English spirit stood up in all reverence when the national song was sung, it is too late in the day for you and anyone else to object to such greetings by national flag and by national song. As administrative head of the District Council, I have issued instructions to greet all visitors, official or non-official, with national flag and national song. Revenue officers are not the only persons to be greeted. There is no resolution of the District Council, but if you require one I shall place the matter before the District Council, and send you a copy of the resolution. 5. All the schools under the district council mounted pictures of the leaders on the walls in school premises. Instructions were issued to school authorities to safeguard these pictures. Several attempts were made by district officials to destroy these pictures, but the school staff did not allow them to touch these pictures. 6. The district council established a press. Besides work of district council, the press was also undertaking outside jobs, including the posters, etc., of the Congress for distribution in public. The district authorities were quite unhappy with this, but the press continued its work. 7. The district council established post offices in all rural schools where only teachers worked as postmasters. The information on national movement printed in the council press were taken up for distribution right up to the villages through these post offices. 8. Annual education conferences were organized by the district council where chosen educationists and intellectuals participated. A magazine, Upthon, was published monthly where History of Ireland appeared as a serial. To propagate education and patriotism, the Raipur District Council had done exceptional work under its president Pandit Shukla. The former State Home Member and Governor Mr. Raghavendra Rao wrote, "For inducing high patriotism and to educate the masses, a systematic method and public morale have to be entwined together. This belief has been very enthusiastically implemented under the devoted guidance of District Council Po." Angry at the patriotic stance of the Raipur District Council, the then local self-minister of the state government, Shri Ramrao Desmukh, on 12 June 1930 dissolved the Raipur District Council and asked the district collector to manage the council. This special officer, on taking over the district council, banned the singing of Vande Mataram and unfurling of the national flag. Several teachers were arrested for participating in the freedom movement. Despite these atrocities, the Raipur District Council's patriotism did not change. Because of his work, Pandit Shukla had become so popular. When Pandit Shukla was released from the jail, his first work was to reinstate all those teachers who were victimized for their participation in freedom struggle or for their nationalistic views. Lahore Congress had resolved for total freedom, and on 26 January 1930 entire nation took a pledge for total freedom. A national week was celebrated between 6 and 13 April 1930. The Satyagraha Andolan was started with Mahatma Gandhi's Dandi March. On this occasion, Pandit Shukla, Pandit D.P. Misra, and Seth Das together went to meet Gandhiji. In a meeting of State Congress Committee held at Raipur, Pandit Dwarika Prasad Misra suggested to name Hindi-speaking part of Central Provinces and Berar as Mahakashal. In the beginning of 1930, Pandit Shukla and P.T. D.P. Misra, along with Chief of Mahakashal Congress Committee Seth Das, toured entire central provinces to propagate the importance of Satyagraha Andolan. Pandit Shukla developed a force of young men to extensively propagate the Andolan. The popular song Randhari Baj Chuki Veer Varpano Kesaria Bana was sung with such fervor on Lesam that listeners were mesmerized. Selected 10 students putting on a red scarf traveled from Raipur to Jabalpur, singing the song at all stations where trains stopped. On 28 April, all prominent leaders of the state were arrested. Pandit Shukla was arrested at Gondia while returning from Balaghat. Next day, he was produced before a British magistrate named Lilly at Jabalpur. When the magistrate asked him, "What is your profession?" Pandit Shukla replied, "A lawmaker, but now a lawbreaker." Pandit Shukla was imprisoned for 2 years. This magistrate Lilly later became secretary of Pandit Shukla when the first Congress cabinet of the state was formed. Initially, Pandit Shukla was kept in Jabalpur jail but was soon shifted to Sioni jail. In Sioni jail, Laknayak Madhav Shri Ain and Vaman Rao Joshi of Vidarbh were also serving the internment along with him. Pandit Shukla was interned in Sioni jail for several months. During this period, he had to fight against atrocities of the jail life. One of the jail regulation was to take thumb impressions of each prisoner for his identification. Shri Vaman Rao Joshi was called by jail authorities and his thumb impression was taken. When he returned, the jail mates, seeing black ink marks on his palm, asked him what was the matter. To this Sh. Joshi replied, they have taken my fingerprints, and that during his internment in 1907 also he had given his fingerprints for identification. 3 days later, Pandit Shukla was called into the jail superintendent's office for giving his fingerprints. Pandit Shukla showed them the jail manual and made it clear to them that the superintendent of the jail isn't authorized to take the fingerprints. When the news came to Pandit Shukla that the government was contemplating filing a case against him for violating the jail rules, he consulted law experts and asked authorities to permit him to have access to a list of more than 100 law books. When government saw that it is very difficult to deal with him, it dropped the idea of filing a case against him. He refused to talk to police officers on this matter. The Seoni administration got in touch with Jabalpur headquarters, which in turn advised Collector Seoni to take action on his own. Finally, a magistrate was called, but Pandit Shukla refused to appear before him without any notice being served on him. The jail warden gathered jail employees to use force on Pandit Shukla to get his thumb impression. Pandit Shukla warned them that he will not give his thumb impression willfully, and if force is used, the government will be entirely responsible. But the authorities were bent upon taking his thumb impression. All of them together forcibly tried to open his fist, but the strong will and the bodily strength of Pandit Shukla prevailed, and despite a 40-minute effort they were unsuccessful in opening his fist. The result of this incident was such that on fourth day after this incident the Nagpur head office issued an order circulating it all over the state that unless ordered by the DIG police, no thumb impressions of any political prisoner. This was a rare incident of courage where he fought for justice to save his self-esteem against the British administration. In the beginning of 1931, Gandhi-Irwin Pact took place. Accordingly, all political prisoners who were imprisoned during Savanay Avenue Bang Andalan were released from the jails. On 13 March, Pandit Shukla, along with other political prisoners of the state, was released from the jail. The overwhelmed public in Raipur gave him a rousing reception like a royal prince. In April, the Congress Adhivesion took place at Karachi under the presidency of Vallabhbhai Patel. Despite the pact with Gandhiji, Sardar Bhagat Singh and two of his colleagues were hanged. The entire nation was saddened with this news. Mahatma Gandhi proceeded to London to participate in the Round Table Conference. Just 2 days before his arrival, the British government had decided to humiliate Congress, and in January 1932, they put ban on many Congress-related organizations. Mahatma Gandhi was arrested on 4 January, and arrests followed in the rest of the country. To oppose Gandhiji's arrest, public meetings were held at Jabalpur, Sagar, Raipur, and Nagpur. For 2 months, Pandit Shukla had been consolidating the war committees, and in April, Pandit Shukla was arrested, charged as dictator of the Andalan. He was charged with creating rebellion against the British government and was ordered imprisonment of 2 years. In the jail, all facilities usually provided to political prisoners were withdrawn, and he was given solitary confinement. The British Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald enacted a bill to separate Harijans from the Hindu masses. To oppose this, Gandhiji in Yurveda jail went into the historical fast. The Hindus and Harijans all over the country united, and Gandhiji broke his fast. Soon Gandhiji was released from jail, and he decided to devote the entire year on Harijan work. For 9 months Gandhiji toured all over the nation. Pandit Shukla, along with his volunteers, accompanied and organized Gandhiji's Mahakoshal tour. Gandhiji entered Mahakoshal in last week of November 1933. Pandit Shukla, along with Gandhiji, travelled for over 600 miles in Seoni, Chhindwara, Batul, Jabalpur, Sagar, and Balaghat. While imprisoned, Pandit Shukla was again elected president of Raipur District Council on 24 October 1930. Angered on this, the state government on 19 October 1930 by an extraordinary gazette took over the Raipur District Council for 3 years. The government stopped all the patriotic programs run by the district council under Pandit Shukla. On 8 March 1934, the council's work was again handed over to Pandit Shukla. He got all the programs of the council restarted which were closed by the government. To infuse national awakening in the state, Pandit Shukla started a weekly Hindi magazine, Mahakashal, from Nagpur in 1935. Next year, this was shifted to Raipur, from where it is now published as a prominent daily. With the emphasis of Congress on encouraging the legislature and the executive, Pandit Shukla decided to consolidate the Raipur District Council. On 9, 10, and 11 December 1935, the council organized a conference, which was inaugurated by Pandit Makan Lal Chaturvedi, and the closing session was addressed by the Congress President Babu Rajendra Prasad. In the conference organized by the District Council next year, on 15 December 1936, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was the special invitee. Welcoming him, Pandit Shukla said, "The state government is not liking the independent working of the council, and is trying to bring in such legislation so as to jeopardize the freedom and effectiveness of such institutions in the state, but very soon the public of the state will give an appropriate reply to the British rulers." Later, when Pandit Shukla joined the state cabinet as Education and Agriculture Minister, he resigned from the Raipur District Council, and a devout congressman of Raipur, Mahad Lakshmi Narayan Das, took over the presidency of the British authorities had formed the Central Provinces and Berar in 1861 by uniting the former state of Nagpur with the territory of Saugar Narbada. In so doing, they brought together the Hindi and Marathi-speaking people of the former and the Hindi-speaking people of the latter. The two linguistic regions which comprised the province had distinctive societies and developed in course of time differing economies. The annexation of the Marathi territory of Berar to the Central Provinces in 1902 added to these complexities. Berar was an area of surplus revenues, and the utilization of these revenues in the Central Provinces after 1902 aroused strong opposition from the politicians of Berar. In 1919, Marathi congressmen dominated provincial politics from the capital city of Nagpur, but subsequently they started dividing. The non-Brahmins and Harijans formed parties in opposition to the Congress, and the Congress itself got divided into rival groups of congressmen and tilkates. The leader of the Gandhian faction in the Marathi Congress until 1925 was the Marwari millionaire Jamnalal Bajaj. The Maharashtrian Brahmin community, which led the Marathi Congress since 1900, regarded Lokmanya Tilak as their political guru, and, for reasons of ideology, as from their unwillingness to surrender political power, they resented Gandhiji's attempt to interfere in the politics of their region. Gandhiji overcame this difficulty by appointing Bajaj as his first lieutenant in the Marathi region. Bajaj used his social position and financial resources, but by 1925 a forthright and ambitious Morshwar Abhyankar, a barrister in Nagpur, succeeded him as leader of the Gandhian Congress. Provincial elections and aftermath. In 1935, after the Congress had agreed to enter the council, the elections for Kendriya Dhara Sabha took place. In the elections, Congress emerged as the largest single organization. Congress had won all over Mahakashal, Nagpur, and Vidarbha. Soon in 1936, the elections for Prantya Dhara Sabha also took place. Like other 6 states, Central Provinces and Berar won with overwhelming and decisive victory for the Congress. Using his social and economic resources, P.T. Shukla won widespread support for the Congress among the urban middle, landed and laboring classes as the party pledged to replace British rule with a government that would serve the interests of all. As a result, the leaders of the Congress won an overwhelming majority of Hindi seats at the elections, and in so doing laid strong claims to help form a government under the new constitution. In the meeting of the Legislative Council Congress Party held on 14 July 1937, Pandit Shukla proposed the name of Dr. Narayan Bhaskar to be the leader of the party in the council, which was accepted. Pandit Shukla, P.T. Dwarika Prasad Misra, S.H. Ram Rao Desmukh, S.H. Purushottam Balwant Gol, S.H. Durga Shankar Mehta, Barrister Mode. Yusuf Sharif were members of the cabinet. V.T. Shukla, on taking charge of the Education Ministry, proposed a new program to bring in basic changes in the method of education. He believed that during the 150 years of the British rule the government had deliberately adopted such methods as to get very few educated. He believed that such an education system which was not imparting self-reliance, building moral character and professionalism was of no use and has to be effectively changed. With the view that for prosperity of democracy, education of masses with emphasis on self-reliance has to be done, he introduced Vidya Mandir education program. Mahatma Gandhi found that his own principles of basic education are embedded in Vidya Mandir education plan. VT. Shukla appointed a committee under the presidency of S.H. Zakir Hussain of Jamia Millia to prepare the curriculum for Vidya Mandir scheme. Spinning, weaving, agriculture, social studies, general science, mathematics, geography, mother tongue, music and drawing were introduced for primary education. Mahatma Gandhi gave his blessings for success of the program. The cabinet of Dr. Carr lacked unity from the beginning. Dr. Carr was invariably surrounded by outsiders rather than his own cabinet colleagues. The internal bickering within the cabinet rose so high that the Central Parliamentary Board had to intervene. On 24 May 1938, the Congress members of the State Legislative Assembly were invited at Pachmarhi. The chief of the Congress Parliamentary Board, Sardar Patel, Maulana Azad and Jamnailal Bajaj had come to Pachmarhi to find a solution of this problem. The members of the High Command, after hearing both the factions, got them to agree on a compromise formula, but Dr. Carr, despite the advice of Babu Rajdor Prasad, insisted on resignation of 3 ministers from Mahakashal. VT. Shukla, PT. Misra and S.H. Mater refused to submit their resignations without such instructions from Congress High Command. On 20 July 1938, Dr. Carr asked the British governor of the state to dismiss these 3 ministers, or else, he said to the governor, "I am submitting my resignation." The British governor had no hesitation in dismissing the 3 ministers. This act of Dr. Carr was not taken kindly by the High Command, and after taking disciplinary action on him, he was asked to resign. To review the situation, a meeting of Congress High Command was held in Wardha on 21 to 23 July under the presidency of Subhas Chandra Bose. Maulana Azad, Sardar Patel and Babu Rajdor Prasad all were of the view that Dr. Carr should resign for the wrong he had done. The Congress Legislative Assembly members met at Wardha on 26 July under the Congress President Subhas Chandra Bose and elected Pandit Ravishankar Shukla as their leader. Being elected leader of the Congress Party in the Legislative Assembly, P.T. Shukla was invited by the governor to form his government. V.T. Dwarika Prasad Misra, P.T. Durga Shankar Mehta, Samhaji Rao Gok, C.H. Hagan Lal Baruka were members of his cabinet. From August 1938 to November 1939 this cabinet remained in office. During this period of 1 year at the time of Haripura Congress session, P.T. Shukla had suggested Tripuri Jabalpur as the next venue of Congress adhitation under the presidency of Subhas Chandra Bose. Tripuri Congress proceeded under quite unusual circumstances. Mahatma Gandhi had announced Pattabhi Sitaramaiah as his nominee, but Subhas Chandra Bose stood against him and won the presidency under all odds. Gandhiji had taken up fast unto death at Rajkot, therefore he couldn't come to Tripuri. Subhas Chandra Bose was in a high fever. A resolution by P.T. Panth when moved in Congress Working Committee, it was felt that the majority in the Working Committee has faith in Mahatma Gandhi. Under these unusual circumstances, Subhas Chandra Bose decided to resign from the presidency and Babu Rajdor Prasad came in as a troubleshooter and assumed charge of interim president of the Congress. So far there was no popular Congress-minded English daily newspaper published in the Central Provinces and Berar. With this in view, Pandit Shukla formed a limited company and started Nagpur Times to propagate Congress views of national importance. This paper had to later face ire of the government in subsequent years of Andolan. The paper was severely penalized several times and had to face difficult financial situation, but undauntingly it maintained its propagation of national policy of Congress. On 1 September 1939, Germany declared war on Poland. Within 2 days, this war took shape of World War Roman II. Without taking the opinion of Indian constituent assembly or legislative assemblies of the states, the then British viceroy enjoined India in the World War. Congress opposed this, and like other Congress-ruled states, the cabinet in Central Provinces and Berar submitted its resignation in November 1939 and reverted to the task of opposing the war. Until independence, the locus of power in the Indian National Congress clearly rested with the Congress President and his working committee. With the formation of the interim government, however, the Congress was faced with the critical problem of determining how the Congress movement could be adapted to its dual role in the new republic. Specifically, what was to be the relation between the Congress in its new function as ruling party and the Congress in its other function as mass organization. In the process of evolving a workable relationship between the two, the Congress was confronted by demands from the mass movement for the direct control of the parliamentary leadership and the government policy-making process. In 1946, Nehru was elected president of the Congress. 1 month later, as the leader of the party, he was asked by the viceroy to form an interim government. The decision to join the interim government placed upon the Congress the responsibility of working out its policy in regard to certain fundamental issues. What should be the relationship between the Congress organization and the new government? More specifically, should Nehru continue as Congress president as well as the leader of the interim government, or should the two roles be separately allotted? If separate, what was to be the relationship between the leader of the interim government and the Congress president? All these problems were discussed by the Congress Working Committee at a meeting late in August on the eve of the assumption of power by the interim government. Pandit Shukla attended the meeting. The majority agreed that Nehru, as leader of the interim government, should resign from the Congress presidency. Architect of Madhya Pradesh, Pandit Shukla was a great administrator. He was one of the first nationalist leaders to realize the sufferings of the people in the states ruled by Indian princes. In July 1946, Pandit Shukla pointedly observed that no princely state could prevail militarily against the army of independent India. Sardar Patel was overwhelmed to see smooth merger of princely states with the Indian Union in CP and Berar. During his chief ministership, there was an all-round development of Madhya Pradesh. The introduction of various schemes, establishment of industries, commissioning of Bhilai steel plant, and starting of many universities were amongst the great achievements. The state of Madhya Pradesh remained fully peaceful during his tenure. Shuklaji had played the leading role in the merger of states, particularly the merger of Hyderabad into the Republic, which Vallabhbhai Patel appreciated wholeheartedly. In spite of being very religious-minded, he was very liberal to other religions. He laid special emphasis on the upliftment of women. He was a staunch opponent of illiteracy, Purdue and dowry system. Personal life. He died on 31 December 1956 at the age of 79 at New Delhi and was survived by his wife. Pandit Shukla dominated the Indian political scene not only before the 10 years of his premier and chief ministership, but for decades after his passing away.